Chapter 11. The Unseen Shackles. A Struggle Without Progress. Jin Mu Wan had always been resilient. Ever since his master shattered his illusions of strength, he had thrown himself into training with even greater determination. Every day, every night, he pushed himself to his limits, determined to bridge the insurmountable gap between him and his master. Yet something was wrong. No matter how hard he trained, no matter how much effort he poured into cultivation, his progress had slowed. At first, he ignored it. He assumed it was natural, that perhaps he needed to keep pushing harder. But as the days turned into weeks, the problem became undeniable. His strength wasn't increasing as fast as before. His stamina wasn't improving at the same rate. Even the energy inside him, the power he had only just begun to grasp, felt restricted. It was as if something unseen was holding him back. An unbreakable wall. One evening, after hours of exhausting training, Mu Wan sat by a stream, staring at his reflection. His body had changed. His once frail limbs had hardened. His muscles had grown stronger. He was no longer the helpless child who had struggled to survive in the wilderness. Yet, despite everything, he was still weak. His master's overwhelming power was proof of that. Mu Wan clenched his fists. What was stopping him? Why did it feel like he was fighting against an invisible shackle? He closed his eyes, focusing inward. The energy within him, the force he had only just begun to understand, was there, but it wasn't flowing freely. It was like a river blocked by unseen barriers. No matter how much he willed it to move, something resisted. Was it his body? His mind? Something else? He needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them, the master's truth. The next morning, Mu Wan stood before his master. "I've hit a wall," he said, his voice steady despite his frustration. "Something is stopping me from progressing." His master looked at him, his gaze as unreadable as ever. After a long silence, he spoke. "You finally noticed." Mu Wan's fingers twitched. His master had known. "You knew this would happen?" "Of course," the old man said. "This is a natural part of cultivation. All who seek strength must face it." Mu Wan exhaled slowly. "Then what's causing it?" His master stepped forward. And suddenly, pressure. Not the overwhelming force from before, not the kind that sent Mu Wan flying. This was different. It was like a weight on his soul. "You lack discipline," his master said. Mu Wan frowned. "I train every day." His master cut him off. "Training your body means nothing if your mind is weak." Mu Wan opened his mouth, then hesitated. "His mind?" His master continued. "Your body has adapted. Your energy has begun to awaken. But your mind," he tapped his own temple, "remains fragile." Mu Wan gritted his teeth. He had survived in the wild, endured brutal training. He had fought, bled, and suffered. And yet his master was saying his mind was weak? "You believe that pain and hardship alone will make you strong," his master said. "But true strength is more than just endurance. It is control. It is clarity. Without these, you will never reach the peak." Mu Wan's fists clenched. Control. Clarity. Was that what he was missing? Meditation. The path to mastery. His master sat down, crossing his legs. "Sit." Mu Wan hesitated, then did as he was told. "The body and the mind are one," his master said. "If your mind is chaotic, your energy will be chaotic. If your emotions control you, your power will be unstable." Mu Wan remained silent. "Close your eyes," he obeyed. "Breathe." Mu Wan inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with crisp mountain air. "Now," his master said, "feel the energy inside you. Do not force it. Do not command it. Simply observe." Mu Wan furrowed his brows. How could he observe something he barely understood? But he tried. He focused inward, searching for the familiar warmth within him. It was there, but it was restless, like a beast pacing within its cage. His master's voice cut through his thoughts. You fight against your own nature. Mu Wan inhaled sharply. His own nature? You seek control through force, his master continued. But true control comes from understanding. You must first know your limits before you can break them. Mu Wan gritted his teeth. Limits. He hated that word. But deep down, he knew his master was right. He had been pushing forward blindly, forcing himself to improve without understanding why he was stagnating. Strength alone wasn't enough. His master had shown him that. Now he needed to understand himself, breaking the shackles. For the next few days, Mu Wan focused entirely on meditation. At first, it was frustrating. Sitting still, doing nothing, it felt like a waste of time. But the more he practiced, the more he noticed. The energy inside him wasn't just blocked, it was scattered, like a wild river with no direction. And the reason? His mind. His master was right. His thoughts were restless. His emotions, his frustration, his desperation, his pride, all of it was interfering with his cultivation. He wasn't in control. He was fighting himself. But once he realized that, everything changed. Slowly, his breathing synchronized with the flow of energy. His scattered power began to gather. His restless mind began to calm. And for the first time since he started cultivating, he felt balance. His energy no longer felt like a beast locked in a cage. It felt alive. It felt his. And when he finally opened his eyes, he knew. The unseen shackles that had been holding him back, they were beginning to break.